Lions Rock Productions.
This is Jay Moore.
This is Greg Cruz.
This is Bryce Vine.
This is Dexter from The Offspring.
This is Nathan
This is Sebastian Younger.
This is Daryl Amy.
This is Stuart Copeland.
This is Mick Gillette.
This is Andy Summit.
This is Dr. Bob Greenberg.
This is Gabby Reese.
This is Rob Bell.
Hey, this is John Leon Guerrero.
Hey, and this is Pete A. Turner.
Hey everybody, this is Chad Gabriel with Tuthill Corporation. I'm here to talk with Pete on the Break It Down show about The Search for Aliveness, a documentary that will help us explore how we can each find aliveness.
And now, The Break It Down show with John Leon Guerrero and Pete A. Turner.
I love it, man. I love it. I love that we've got Chad on here. I love that, through my own network of people, you get PR companies that reach out and they say, hey, you've got to get someone like, in this case, Chad on your show because they get what we get and we get Chad. I'm so big on this stuff, man. I'm so big on, let's see if I can describe it. I'm big on slowing down, lowering the bar, like not being so damn hard on ourselves and figuring out what enriches your life. And that to me is what aliveness is about. Happiness. I go out and pursue it. You don't necessarily get to catch happiness, but you definitely get to pursue the hell out of it. So I dig what you guys are illustrating. Let's dig in a little bit and talk about what the vision is for the series.
Absolutely. So the weird thing about why we're doing this is that it's coming from the manufacturing company that I work for, Tuthill Corporation. So Tuthill is a 126-year-old manufacturing company. We make pumps, meters, vacuums, blowers, things you don't see every day. And we started to build our culture here, which we at the time called Conscious Company, back in 2004. And it was really about awareness and choice, having people that might not otherwise have time or space to think about what they want in their lives, to do that. And we have a series of 3-day retreats where we have people from all levels in the company come through to kind of explore, who they are, the impact they're having, what they want in life, and the choices they've made to kind of get them where they are and lead them where they want to go. And so fast forward to 2015, we started to call that aliveness, that whole idea of creating the life you want to live, awareness, choice. We want to take some of the success we've had with our employees beyond our four walls. And we were asking ourselves, every year we set goals, and it's like, how can we do that? How can we take this idea of aliveness beyond our four walls? And, with my team, we were just kind of brainstorming, and one of the guys that I work with, he's the director of the film, the series, his name is Vita Pellicano. He's like, why don't we do a docu-series on aliveness? Like, let's talk about what it is beyond our four walls. Let's put it in front of people who may not otherwise have access to this. Like, I grew up, my dad's a pizza restaurant manager. My brother's a mailman. I've got another brother who works in a factory environment. And these are all people that I love dearly. And in their jobs, they don't get exposure to things like, self-improvement, self-awareness, these kind of leadership types of things. It just doesn't happen, And so we're like, I was digging the idea. I think it was cool. Like, let's raise awareness of what aliveness is and how we can, make choices to feel more alive. That's how it starts. It's kind of inside out. It's an odd sponsorship, call it, and it's a really cool opportunity for my team and I to do this kind of project in our roles here at Tuthill.
I love it. Let's also make sure we mention Eric and Magda, who's the cinematographer. So Vito's out there. He's doing the directing. You're doing the Sherpa work. I love that your title at Tuthill is Sherpa of Purpose. Man, we're going to talk about that in a minute, but. Sure. This is great. This kind of goes back to the old days of a corporate sponsoring a thing like this. Like, if you think of Wild Kingdom, you instantly think, oh yeah, Mutual of Omaha. You don't realize that's an insurance company sponsoring this thing. They make it happen and give us all so much in terms of joy and education and everything. So it's cool to see that there's companies out there still doing this. And another thing is, I'm a bit of an expert on culture myself, and how you act really matters, and here's the company putting money into something. They don't have to put money into this. This is an investment. I talk about measuring affect over effect, and you're getting a response to stimuli when you put this out. And it's like, wait, Tuthill, I don't even know what the hell they make, but damn, they're leaning forward on something that Chad gets to go out and do. So talk to me a little bit about the role of Sherpa of Purpose at Tuthill. What the heck does that even mean?
Yeah. So the last 8 years I spent as the director of branding at Tuthill, and that was like traditional employer branding role. How do we tell our story beyond the products, not only to customers but also to our employees? And we went through a reorg this year. Our CEO officially declared himself the Chief Aliveness Officer, and we basically started to arrange our functional areas around a document that we call our compass. It's what a lot of companies might call their vision, mission, values, but ours starts with the purpose, which is to wake the world. And we really wanted to align our functional areas around the compass. With my role in branding and working with the lines of business and product promotion, as well as the employer branding piece, the storytelling, it was like, man, I'd love to spend more than 5 to 10% of my time, which I'm spending on Wake the World events and activities. And to do that, we need to basically reorg, and we're doing that. And now I get to spend all my time on it. And Wake the World being our purpose, we're not talking about like we're from Chicago. It's not like Wake Chicago. It's not Wake Illinois. It's 7.6 billion people we'd love to reach. Aspirational. I know it's not going to happen in my lifetime, but to be a part of setting up this legacy of myself, Tuthill, the Tuthill family, it's just an honor. And the Sherpa piece of that comes from, I think of a Sherpa, it's someone who's leading a journey, a climb. It's a tall climb to get to 7.6 million people.
Yeah.
And it's also a person who's carrying the bags. Like, I'm on the trip with my employees, with the team here. And I'm not just saying, I'm pointing the finger and saying, go in that direction, go wake the world. I'm like, we're going to figure this out together, go get it. So that's really where the mountain climbing theme, everybody on my team's got a mountain climbing theme name. So yeah, Sherpa, just, that's how that came to be.
No, that's a great concept. And this breakaway that we see at corporations away from traditional names and roles, the the chief of branding doesn't necessarily get to go create a documentary, but how the heck does a company that no one's ever heard of, making things that we use and need every day, how the heck do they break through in a marketing circle? Like, no, our stuff's really, really better than the next guy. I can appreciate that you guys are really leaning forward with this and trying to get there. What part of Chicagoland are you guys in?
We're in Burr Ridge, so it's about 20 miles southwest of the city.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. So almost Interstate 80 or not quite?
Not quite. We're I-55.
Okay.
Just on I-55, just west of Route 83. So
back in my olden days, I used to. 83, sure, I know what that is. I used to live in the Chicago area. I lived in Crystal Lake and Mundell. I have a whole bunch of different areas. So
north side, way north. Yeah,
way north and west. I also live downtown, right across from Wrigley Field. So I know I know where you guys are at. It must be nice for you to be able to get out and go do some work that's not. Because winter, the thing is that winter in Chicago lasts so long for a California guy. And I'm like, why is the weather crap in May?
It's already begun, man.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It is here.
So let's talk a little bit about the concept, the Search for Aliveness and these series. By the way, you guys can check this out. So the searchforaliveness.com. Same thing on Facebook, Instagram. But more interestingly, right now, as you guys are creating this, is on Twitter. You can follow this stuff on Aliveness Series. And this is where you get to see, as they're recording these things, you can check it out. So again, it's the searchforaliveness.com. You can see Chad's handsome face and learn all about the mission and the links to Tuthill there. So let's talk about what you guys are. Okay, so how many of these vignettes do you have in the can already?
We have about seven or eight in the can. We were going out to get a thought leader perspective in December. And so we're just constantly trying to fill our funnel with a mix of regular people and thought leaders alike to get these different perspectives on, the ultimate question is, what do you do to feel alive, right? It's not what makes you feel alive, because you could start thinking about, family makes me feel alive. Okay, great. What about family, and what are the actions? And that's we're setting out to craft this recipe. So yeah, we've got about 7 or 8 in the can, and we're taking what we have already to create episode 1, which is the one that really sets up what is this exploration we're going on, why are we doing it, a very subtle why is Tuthill supporting this. It's not going to be at all about selling products or selling the company. But it's important to kind of set the framework for why is this something we care about? Why is it important for people to watch this? And that's going to be up to them in the end. But that that kind of timeless tale of people want to get the most out of life, and they don't necessarily know how to do that. Not to mention, with all the distraction and mobile devices in front of us, it's hard to take time to do that.
Boy,
so we're trying to just we're just trying to serve it up on a platter. Like, here's some stuff other people have tried and have seen some success in. And it's like pizza, right? They're going to taste this recipe, and some people like sausage, pepperoni, some people just like cheese and veggies, whatever. But the idea is you have a platter of ingredients that you can try. And some are going to be bigger things than other things. But just finding for you, like, what it is that makes you feel alive through the eyes of others, so you can make that part of your day-to-day, life, the choices you make.
So a lot of, like what we do here, you're gathering perspective on life. And in this case, aliveness is the theory. What was the premise going out before you guys recorded vignette number 1? What was your guys'?
The premise is to craft this recipe for aliveness. It's a tangible recipe that, to give, just like I said, gives people, it invites people to slow down and say, what have I done? What choices am I making to feel more alive, to live a life most fulfilled? And just to kind of offer them a fresh perspective. And also we wanted this to be relatable. So when I say we were going to mix the perspectives of regular people and thought leaders, the regular people, like, we want people to connect to this. I want the burly dude who doesn't like talking about his feelings to share what he does to feel alive. I want, the millennial who gets a bad rap to share, what they do to feel alive. Millennials maybe get seen as they're so about their devices and nothing important in some cases, or they're lazy. Like, I want to counter that and say, you know what, regardless of where you're coming from, there are ways to feel alive. And it's not always about that altruistic purpose. It's other things too. And the thought leader side of it is, I think there's some science behind aliveness. There's chemicals our brains release, probably heard of oxytocin. There are, spiritual things that have to do with aliveness. We want to talk to, different spiritual leaders from different religions to see if there really is a universal truth in aliveness, that regardless of culture, background, money, all that stuff, what is it that we as humans can do to feel most alive?
Yeah. I think it's great. And by the way, again, everybody should go to the search for aliveness.com and then jump on that casting call prompt, and then you can go down and actually see the burly working class guy who doesn't want to talk about his touchy-feely stuff. Like, that's the guy he just talked about. And I do love this because as a chronicler, and I always say, like, we illustrate life here. We gather perspective, and my recipe may not be yours, but here is a recipe that works. Like, I like some almonds in my in my cranberry sauce, and you like it out of the can. You know what? Cool. At least we're talking about cranberry sauce together, because
exactly.
There's so much anger and dismay towards each other about our situation currently in the government and everything else. And it's, if I focus on my own stuff and I work on investing in my own grass, other people's grass is less important. And if my grass is solid and good, I should have already been helping somebody else who really needs something. Maybe doesn't even have any grass. Maybe doesn't have dirt to put grass on. So, yeah, this whole what's not aliveness is getting on Facebook and Twitter and blowing people up, trying to prove a point and driving yourself and everybody else around you crazy.
Well, you think about this. So, like, when there have been documentaries done on, like, the search for happiness, and when we think about aliveness here at Tuthill, it's a very well-rounded perspective of it. We think about it in like five categories. So the first one is purpose, and that's my individual purpose. Do I know why I'm here? Have I tried to articulate that? And have I made choices to get me there? Part of that stems from, I think, when I first started receiving mentoring from my mentor, he's like, hey, first thing I want you to do is write your own obituary, and then tell me who's going to read it.
Yeah.
And then tell me about the choices you're going to make to create that legacy. It's like, wow. So purpose. And for some folks that shows up in a religious sense, life of service, and there's all different perspectives on purpose. The second category, do you have a question about that? Because I know I want to cover all five just to.
Yeah. Well, let's follow our own advice and slow down a little bit. So you're talking about purpose. When you die, no shit, there's about 100 words written about you, and you take back and you look from that perspective, what are those 100 words going to be? and how do I make them into something that my people can be proud of? And when they talk, there's something that I'm proud to have had this life. That's such a great perspective to look back on that, because that is really how it works. There's only so much that can be said and captured. There's only so many pictures that are going to fit on that pamphlet, and then that's going to be it. So, okay, give us number 2.
Yeah. Number 2, connection. And so connection might be connection with other people. It might be connection with nature. It might be connection with a spiritual source or anything like that. But that notion of, we're not here alone. We're human beings wired for connection. So, and that's, again, back to the oxytocin, the chemical side of it. Like we're physiologically wired to be in connection with others. And when you mentioned social media, I was like, okay, so there is actually oxytocin that can be released in social media experiences, and dopamine as well. I mean, people post something because they want likes, and that feels good. And I'm going to do it more and again and again and again. I'm going to check it before bedtime. I'm going to check it when I'm on the toilet. It feels great, blah, blah, blah. So connection, that's also part of aliveness. And aliveness, it might not be necessarily the good version of aliveness. It could just be, and that takes me to the next category, which is the full spectrum of human emotion. So we use an acronym. You may have heard of it. It's SASHET. It's like used in the world of life coaching and coaching. Sure. So SASHET, and it's sad, angry, scared, happy, excited, tender. Those 6 supposedly describe our full range of emotions. I know there's variants of those, but at a high level, those are used in psychology and in coaching a lot. So we talk about aliveness in all those. Because how alive do you feel when you're going down a hill on a roller coaster? That's pretty, it's scary, maybe exciting. Sadness, that's part of aliveness, right? So
no doubt.
Yeah, that's a 3rd category.
Okay, so getting your sachet and accounting for those things. So to slow down there, one of the things I encourage folks, and definitely try to remind myself to do, is to gather joy. It's easy to gather the A, you just get all mad and everything. But yeah, when was the last time you had unbridled happiness? And make sure you keep track of that and know that, you're going to have some bad, hard days. You're going to have some downs, that kind of thing. But definitely chronicle those peaks and remember those times. And then what led up to those joyous moments, right? Like what gets you there? That's going to put you in the right frame of mind. It's easy to lose sight of the joy. I'm sorry. Keep going.
Yeah, man. Well, you hit on something that's really important there. And it does have to do with that time of, reflection. And, so I noticed I was joyous. What caused it? Right. Because if I start to notice and be aware of what caused it, I can go back and get more. I can create it for myself through the choices I make. And that's pretty powerful. A lot of times people just kind of go through life. They don't slow down and say, what just happened? And once I do that, like I do journaling every Friday just to capture some thoughts, capture like, what have I done this week to live into my purpose? What have I not done? Where was I not the way I wanted to be? That kind of stuff. And that actually touches on the 4th pillar, which is being present and engaged. So just, there's a common tendency for people to worry about the past and to worry about the future, but not to just be fully in the moment and enjoy, all the feelings that I'm having right now, to be fully present and connected, even in conversation. I mean, you got, again, all this distraction, the phone's in our hands, they're buzzing, I'm checking a text, but am I connecting? Am I being present?
Right.
And you could, there's overlap between these categories, but they're really important. And so that's that present and engaged piece. Any questions about that one?
Yeah, well, I want to talk about presence and engagement, because from my point of view and what I've learned along the way, presence and engagement, of course, but presence is really, it's an acquired skill, and it's perishable. So being authentic in your presence, and then being authentic to yourself in your presence, like, am I putting everything else aside to truly be there for my friend in their big time of need, regardless of anything I get out of it? And what does that feel like? How do you set up that ability, and filtering out all of the other distractions and getting singular in that focus? I found that that's just such a powerful thing, and a common trait with folks who are elite performers, folks that go on stage, that ski down a mountain, whatever it is. they have the ability to create that presence in that moment because you have to. There's no room for anything else. When you surf, there's no room for anything else. Like, you just have to be in that moment with the ocean. So I love that. Keep going.
I want to touch back on presence is not, it's, I think you said something, I don't remember the exact words, but it's not a given. Like, it takes work.
Yeah.
And it's like a muscle that we can exercise. And just a quick story that ties that together with sachet. And I've shared this with others as I've explained this. Like, I was at my Uncle Tony's funeral, and I'm in the church, and I'm feeling this wave of emotion come over me. And many of us have had this, like, that terrible cramping pain in the Adam's apple. Like, I'm doing everything I can not to lose it, right? I don't want to just explode in tears, and I'm just manning up. I'm trying, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to do what society has conditioned me to do, and that's not cry. And yet I'm okay with a good cry, you know? And actually, I think it's healthy. And yet I found myself in the moment present thinking, holy cow, why am I not letting myself cry at my Uncle Tony's funeral? What is going on? And that's just that first step of awareness. It's like, okay, so what do I want to do with that now that I'm aware of it? And so next time I'm in that place, it's like, maybe I just open the floodgates, see what happens. What can I learn from that point? But without being focused on presence and noticing that, I never would have had that thought. I would have just been like, man, it sucks again to have that terrible feeling in my Adam's apple. And sometimes we'll talk about, the human condition versus the conditioned human. This is an example of the conditioned human. Somewhere along the way, it's I don't know if it's learned or taught or forced upon, but like, men aren't supposed to cry. I remember watching Sesame Street. I remember watching Mike Singletary from the Chicago Bears on Sesame Street as a kid singing "It's Okay to Cry," and it's like, I see why they did that. I really do. And and I'm 40 now. I was probably, 3-4 years old when I'm watching Sesame Street, maybe a little older. But I could see why Sesame Street wanted to put some effort into sending a message from a manly, Chicago Bear football player. There's something to that human condition versus the conditioned human that we have to break through. And a lot of that has to do, when you talked earlier about there's a lot of anger out there now. Yeah. I think there's even some backsliding going on. And so for us to focus on ourselves so that we can be better as a whole is super important. Instead of pointing a finger and saying this is someone else's fault. It's like, okay, well, let me slow down.
Yeah.
How have I contributed to this situation?
Yeah.
And
negatively and positively. Like, what's my scoreboard look like? And, what's the least I could be doing right now to improve my score? For sure. You talked a little bit about the death thing, too, and I think this is a good illustration point because you've got someone like Mike Singletary yourself. I've been to funerals, and here's the thing that I know is that we suck at death. You might have been through a lot of it, but just because you've been through a lot doesn't mean you handle it well. It doesn't mean that you're always going to handle it well. You might get past your emotional point, and if we've got these norms that don't really align with who we are and we're trying to play a role, you're not present. And that
that's right.
Comfort
and authentic.
Yeah, exactly. That truth to who you are. It's okay to cry and let it go a little bit. It's okay to not be sure what to feel. It's okay to be upset because the family made a decision that you disagreed with, and you're all torn. It's hard. There's nothing about that loss that's easy. So we have to all give each other a little bit of space and say, this is how I'm going to be present. This was the decision we had to make at the time. Not everybody's going to agree with it, but we got to move forward. Can we agree on that? And if not, then back up, find something simpler and find the point of agreement and then go, okay, we can agree that we're both hurting right now and have a hug, cry a little bit, and then worry about the hard stuff a little later down the road maybe. Or just be tolerant that some things move on without you getting your way every single time. So, boy. Were we on 4? Is that where we're at right now?
That's 4. And one more thing too, like that I wanted to touch on there. Mm-hmm. I would argue that the opposite of aliveness is not death, but numbness. And I think that sometimes when we choose not to have a voice and just kind of cope with what just happened, that's a form of numbness. When we don't want to feel the conflict because of a disagreement, or we don't want to feel sadness. And that's where things like addiction start to creep in. And that's also where numbness starts to enter the picture. So, just again, focusing on myself so I can learn about myself. What are the things that trigger certain things in me? What are my patterns?
Sure.
And how can I make choices? Yeah. So, I liked what you just said, like we suck at death. And I think, not that that's a great thought, something that brings me joy, but it's like we do. And like, why?
Yeah.
What is it? It's because I think it's a discomfort of sadness.
Yeah.
Anger, scared, all those things come into play when we talk about death.
Yeah. And there's a finality, obviously, to it. So a lot of these things, it's your last chance to do this, and you're constantly reminded that that's the end. It's a challenging thing, and you can make yourself be better at it. But the way I think that works best is to slow down, gain some perspective, understand that there's other people in the room, and who really owns the decisions and the outcomes. That person pretty much is it's not about the person who's passed, and it's about people who are left. And if it's mom, and mom says this, you got to get on the mom train. It's her call if dad's gone, The spouse, it's like, let's get aligned behind the spouse and figure out where it is. And you guys want to disagree stuff later on, but it's not about you. It's not about the dead person. It's about the person who's, closest and holds the decisions and holds the responsibility. Oh my gosh, we can all save a lot of heartache if we find the person that, really owns that. So anyhow, okay, so let's do 5, and then I want to move into some hosting stuff that you do. So let's tell me about 5.
Yep, the 5th one is energy, and so energy, it could be nutritional energy, physical energy. It could just be things like mood. It's that what am I doing to fuel my body so that I can create the life I want to live, and it's both on the physical and overall wellness thing, mental health, all those things I just mentioned. So that's the 5th one.
Well, that's fantastic. Yeah, and we've learned a lot about that on the show as well, too. Like, genetics, epigenetics, how we feed ourselves, what we put into the machine body, and what outcomes are realistic to expect. People don't have the same wiring, and doesn't mean it doesn't mean that they're a jerk.
Yeah.
Just means that they have a different setup than you. And again, worry about your own stuff. Put good fuel in, put that fuel to work with your body, and you definitely will be in a better place. You will have a more alive sense of being. I love that. That's great. That's great counsel. I'm going to write that down so I remember that for myself. Because I eat like
I was doing the P90X workout several years ago, and I remember Tony Horton was like the guy that he's super high energy. And I remember him saying something like, bad food, bad mood. And I'm like, wow. And I've paid attention. Like it's been pretty true. If I have a super crappy lunch, I'm going to probably, just run out of fuel and be a little grumpy later in the day. That's kind of true. So
okay, so you're a corporate guy working at Tuthill, and you guys have a great corporate culture, and you're investing in that and trying to share these lessons with the world, and all of that stuff is laudable. But how does Chad get the job of host? How do you have a background in hosting, or give me an idea how you pulled that off? It's a good gig.
That's a great. So Vito as the director, we went back and forth. Should we hire an actor to be the host of this? And what it came down to was, so I've done some facilitation of the retreats that we host here, with our employees, and I really get the topics, I really understand it. So when it comes down to hiring an actor, like none of this is scripted. It's just live impromptu interviews. I go in with some topics to explore around those 5 categories that we just talked about, but also to see like, what are we missing beyond those 5? What other stuff are people doing? And it's been cool to see that, we are not going out there as experts. We're going out there as very curious people. But to answer the question for a host, I mean, A, it's convenient. I'm already here. B, I know the content. And C, I love people. I connect with people. And, I've been told I'm trustworthy. So stepping into those rather intimate conversations, it is a privilege to be able to sit with those folks and hear their stories. And I do that. That's part of who I am. So
I like it.
I love having fun. That helps.
Well, yeah, but there's an authenticity. One of the things we've learned about here is truth. Like in acting, we have actors on all the time. Is show up on time, hit your marks, and tell the truth. That sounds easier than it actually is, because your truth has to actually be your truth. It can't just be the truth or a truth. You have to be better than that. So that is a unique skill and it truly is a skill. Like, you may have a capability, but you have to put time into honing that. What have you learned from doing the 7 episodes that you've had in terms of your ability to host?
Oh man, I can fly by the seat of my pants with the best of them. I think, just like you. I mean, you've done several interviews, and it's like, how do I follow a thread to a point where it's, still relevant, still entertaining. I don't want to get sidetracked in those interviews, but like to have the ability to come back into where, the topic area that we're trying to explore. It's not real easy to do that. And yet I've learned that as long as I, stay anchored in aliveness in those 5 categories as kind of the starting point for those conversations, it becomes a lot easier. I don't get caught up in what question do I want to ask next. It's just.
This episode of the Break It Down Show is brought to you by Lions Rock Productions.
That's us.
We publish, evaluate, and develop podcasts just like this one, consult others to build their own, and create associated content and content marketing strategies.
So if you're launching or expanding your social media presence, your business, or your personal brand, or if you just want to take your media presence to the next level,
reach out to us on Twitter
at Pete A. Turner
or at JohnLG69
at the Break It Down Show.
There's 1,000 ways to get a hold of us.
Now enjoy the show.
Stay anchored in aliveness in those 5 categories as kind of the starting point for those conversations. It becomes a lot easier. I don't get caught up in what question do I want to ask next. It's just being, having childlike curiosity. Like I'm not going in as an expert. Just kids ask a lot of questions and they don't care what people think when they ask those questions. Yeah. So I love to keep that as a rule of thumb in my mind. And sometimes it, up front, it's like, hey, do I have to be careful with you? Is there anything you really don't want me to touch on? And that's just out of respect for the person I'm interviewing. I haven't gotten a lot of, don't talk about this. It's just, I think even the fact that I asked, I don't know if they assume I'm not going to go to a really weird place or anything like that, but the childlike curiosity has been a really good guide for me.
Yeah, that's good. The other things, and actually I had an email exchange with Scott Husing, who does a lot of best-selling author of Echo and Ramadi, Scott Husing. We do a lot of shows together, and he'll co-host and produce shows. And so I'm slowly just highlighting elements of hosting that he hasn't got down yet. And this is in no way speaking down to Scott's ability to host. He does a great job. But when I see certain things, I'm like, this right here, and one of the ones that's hard, and I don't know if you've realized this or maybe you've mastered it already, but
I doubt it.
Silence, right? So you let the silence make the question get heavier by the second. And if you're comfortable as the host with silence, which you have to be, you just let it hang. And then the person will fill that something in and oftentimes go in deeper than their surface level kind of controlled answer, So you ask that hard question. And so I love watching real master interviewers and looking at what they do. So I've been watching Dan Rather's Intimate Interview series, and he asked, oh, it's so good. And he asked Kenny Rogers a question, and this is deep into the interview, and he says, regrets, and lets it hang.
For sure. Yeah.
And Kenny's like, I had my kids too late. These last 2 kids I have. Should have done that. Wow. I look at that answer. First off, the courage from Kenny to say that. Yeah. And he's like, not that he doesn't love his kids, not that he's not excited about them, but he's like, a 70-year-old man shouldn't have young kids. I'm not going to see him grow. They're not going to have those later years with me. And so, but that's one word, regrets.
Powerful, open-ended questions.
Yeah.
And that silence is golden. When we're leading our retreats here, as you can imagine, 12 people sitting in a semicircle maybe have never done this in their lives before, and it gets intense. And that silence, we call that let it land. Let the question land. Be comfortable, and it's okay that it's uncomfortable for people. And as a facilitator, it's like, just let it land. Let it simmer. Let them noodle on it a little bit. And like you said, it's very common for that next level of an answer to come out in that situation. And I've certainly gotten better with the silence. I'm a talker, so I'm quick to fill the silence. And yet when I know I'm letting it land because it's a tough question or I want it to be something they think about, I'll just let it sit.
Yeah, there's a process too. When you say regrets, they've got to fill in a lot of blanks. That takes time.
Sure do.
And then they've got to sort no, really, what is my regret? Because you don't get to go, no regrets, because he's Kenny Rogers.
You don't get to.
Yeah. He doesn't get to say that, and he's not gonna. Not if you let him. So like your desire to talk, my desire to talk, that also helps create a weight to the silence. It's like, well, isn't he gonna say something? Isn't he gonna let me off the hook? No, I'm not. Regrets.
Yep.
Yeah, it's just a fantastic question. I'm also a big fan of Graham Norton from BBC. He's got the Tonight Show basically for London. So anybody who's promoting anything, and because London's London and there's not really a whole lot of other big things, he on his couch will be Bradley Cooper, Lady Gaga, Ryan Gosling, and then someone from Great Britain. Like you have to hold your head together, and his ability to weave that together, it's superb. He's so good at it. So.
That's a craft when you have multiple interviewees sitting together to honor all of their time because they're there together in that moment. And it's like, yes, you want to focus on one person because they're next in line, but the others are still sitting on the couch. I've only had one dual interview so far, and it was a father and a son, and it wasn't that hard because they naturally, it was everything kind of tied together content wise anyways. It was like, so what do you think about your dad doing this? And what do you think about your son not doing this yet? And it was kind of like natural and easy. But I could see that. Yeah, man, we've got those big personalities sitting on a couch.
Yeah. There's a lot of ego too. So you have to, as the host, at least I find you have to put my ego aside. And sometimes I'll give into it and I'll want to bring up a joke or I'll tell a story or whatever.
Yeah.
But that, I also have to kind of go with what I do. So I appreciate it. But having that many egos on the couch, having your own ego and trying to find, and he seems to say the fewest amount of words, per host. He just says what he needs to say, maybe cracks his joke, but he teases out what he wants. He's just fantastic. Yeah. I highly recommend his work. All right. So how many of these episodes are you guys going to do?
The original plan was a season of 6 to start and then expand if it's well received. What we have chosen to do instead was to basically feature each individual interview as an episode. We were going to do a hodgepodge and we were going to consolidate themes and do episodes based on that. We were going to do an episode on aliveness, depending, the age perspective on aliveness. How does that change over time? But what we found was there's so much richness in what these people have to share, and we're just going to focus on the story of each individual as we go. There might be a couple kind of hybrid episodes along the way. So I think that the goal next year will be an episode a month for the year. So I think that would comprise of season 1. And it'll be that mix of, again, I hate saying regular people and thought leaders. Everybody's regular people and everyone's a thought leader.
Yeah.
But, that mix there, where we're at right now is we've got 8 in the can, right, to kind of edit and release for next year. We're currently looking to get a few more thought leaders locked in, and to be completely honest, to get more diversity in the show. When we set out to do this global search for aliveness, it was not we don't want the white man's North American perspective on aliveness.
Sure.
We love to get a global perspective. So we did go out to Mexico. We got a young woman who lives in extreme poverty's perspective on aliveness. She's got nothing when it comes to materialistic items, but she's got a lot of other things in her life with her son, her community, things that are the, non-U.S. kind of view. And
Sure.
We're going to head out to Africa in January to understand some things about the tribal communities. But even here in the U.S., it's my personal network and Vito's personal network and, Erica's, it's not very diverse. And so it's that's where, for anyone listening here with Pete today, I'd love for you to take a look at that casting call on the searchforaliveness.com and see from a race and age, whatever perspective, we'd love some help with diversity, different cultures in the personas or the roles that we're looking to spend time with.
There's a lot of healing in that. as well. I produce podcasts for people. So one of the shows that I do is called Find Your Summit for Mark Pattison. And he just had a guy named Ken Nisimbi. And Ken, as a late teenager, his mom grabbed his 3 brothers. So she already lived in Seattle. They'd come from Nairobi, right? And so she had lived in Seattle for a couple of years, and she was sending them money. And they were sort of living like a Disney sitcom kind of life, where like there was no parent, just people to take care of them and everything, in a 5-bedroom house. And she's like, "Hey, come visit me in Seattle, you guys. Come out here, you 3 young boys." And so they come out, and she's like, "Surprise! You moved to Seattle, my 1-bedroom apartment with me."
Oh man.
And so they, you go from Nairobi to Seattle, wildly different, and he says a couple of powerful things. Best move his mom ever made, even though it was hard. He had so many things to learn. But here's what defies the normal day-to-day narrative in our lives is, here's a black guy, he's an immigrant, and he got all of the help, so much so that he's still there working, and he's giving back now from the church. And that's not an endorsement of anything or against any of those things, but here's an immigrant, a black dude in a city, getting a lot of help from the church, and he's turning around now and multiplying that success that they had with him. So what a powerful story, and so contrary to the nonsense we see in the news all the time. And I talk to folks who immigrate here for business all the time with my other show, Popping the Bubble, which everybody should listen to. But all the time, like I got fired from my job in Brazil, so I came here, and all I've done is had opportunity to do what I need to do since then. People willing to help. So yeah, we're not perfect, and yes, we have problems, but there's also people coming here because there's opportunity. And what's more alive than that? Coming here and going, I'm taking my shot in America.
Yeah, man, a clean slate,
right?
Blank canvas. What do you want to create? And yes, with that, I mean, I recently got to go on an immersive experience in Chicago with a company called Ignite, who does immersive experiences. We actually went to Mexico with them as well, and it was interesting. It was a diversity and inclusion experience with an active listening component. And so they spent like a little bit of the morning talking about how to be an active listener, and then they brought in local, refugees and immigrants in Chicago who are seeking jobs. So imagine a room full of people, practicing their interview skills, bringing their resumes. And this is real stuff, though. It's not a simulation. These are people trying to find work in Chicago.
I get it. Yeah.
And it's not easy. And they're cast aside just because of the name on their resume or where they're from, their background. And the active listening component of that was really cool, because it was like, obviously a lot of them have really thick accents.
Sure.
Couple that with 30 of them in a room talking to 30 other people at the same time.
Boy,
it's like, man, how can I stay present in this conversation?
Yeah.
And cast aside all the labels or misperceptions I have about what a refugee is, what an immigrant is, and really empathize with them and just like, holy cow, what an amazing immersive experience to get to really feel what that's like, and I mean, not to feel what it's like, just to see what they're going through. And that's it's cool to find experiences like that.
Yeah, being able to share someone else's reality, you're not going to get all of it. And one of the things that I try to teach folks is like, miscomfort is not discomfort. So, and I know miscomfort's not really a word, but it kind of is, in that if you go to Japan, there's going to be culture shock. You're going to feel uncomfortable. You may not like everything. That's cultural intersection, and it's a good thing. It gives you an opportunity to grow and see life as best you can from that moment in a different way. And then you're on your journey, you're on your way. Like, you have that childlike curiosity you talked about, and you work on trying to figure out what is reality here. I mean, I'm a guy with a lot of combat time, and my job is to go out into the villages and talk to the folks and bring back reality. And when you go and you sit down and you spend time, and it's not about yourself, and you focus on building trust, one, the enemy shows up and they want to know who this guy is who's asking different questions. And you start to be allowed to see more reality too. You see less of the performance. And these immersive things, it's just if you allow it to be,
right,
it can be such a powerful illustrator for what is important in life and what's not.
I love that. If you allow it to be, like, am I going to allow myself to be present in the moment? Am I going to let all the feelings in regardless of what they are? It might be nerves, scared, right? If I allow it to be, and that's a choice, because I could say I'm going to go, I'm going to check the box and say I went, but I'm not going to let it in. I'm not going to learn from it. That's a choice. And that's a lot, again, about, people just realizing they have, I think, more ability to shape their lives and who they are than they think. And it's not everybody, but I notice in the retreats and, with friends and family, it's like, man, a lot of people, including myself at some point, we're just getting swept along by the current of life, wherever it takes them to go, rather than hopping up on that surfboard and, cutting left, cutting right, riding the pipe, whatever, like we're a lot more at choice than I think we generally believe. And I'm using a lot of generalizations here, but.
Yeah, but I think they're fair generalizations. When you go to a conflict zone and you ask folks, so I've interviewed thousands of people, and young men, you ask them, like, they do not have the ability to imagine the future. They don't, like, if I solved your problem right now of no money, no job, what would you do? I would just work.
Right.
They just think in the minute because it's unimaginable. Success, the future, they can't afford that. It doesn't, people they know die, they get shot. Inner city kids. We had this conversation with Shaka Sangur the other day, and he's like, yeah, it's unimaginable. Prison is part of the community. And until you can understand that reality, your reality is irrelevant. It's nowhere near theirs. And so only being able to, again, exist in their reality and allowing that to happen and shutting up and asking questions. So one of my favorite questions to ask was, you get these male leaders, like, what's something that's just out of your control that keeps you up at night? Like, what keeps you up? And then they would say, oh, man, if I could just turn this corner, this part of my life would be better. And it was small stuff. It wasn't these big epic things. It wasn't sending your kids to college. And that's what framed my mind, was like, okay, the things we're trying to do that are massive and important, that are huge, that brief well, way up high, probably don't resonate down here, because this dude just wants this part of the road to be flat so that he doesn't have to fix his van every 3 trips,
Yeah.
And we can make that road flat all day long. We can go out there every week and repound it down. We have a bulldozer, It's like, can we just make that part of the road flat? That'll help this guy. And, and so it is the most simple things, and a lot of times in these places, and these are things that don't matter to us. I always say, we have potable water and we piss in it. There's people that would lose their mind to see that much extravagance.
Oh my gosh, yeah, what a perspective.
Right.
Man. When I was in Mexico, sitting down with one of the guys that we went with, he was saying, hey, Chad, have you thought about when you go out to explore aliveness with people, especially or specifically this notion of purpose and either locating or identifying on my purpose or rediscovering it, have you ever thought that people outside of the U.S. don't think about that kind of stuff? And I was like, I haven't spent a lot of thought on it, but he said, I make up, if you were to ask someone from Zambia what their purpose was, they may answer with sweeping the floor. And he said, that said, if I were to ask someone what makes them feel alive, they may say sweeping the floor. And I said, what's behind that? What do you mean? And he goes, well, a lot of it in Africa with the tribal sense, there's a notion of Ubuntu, which means I am because we are. Is that right? I think I am because we are. And so I exist for the sake of the tribe. And whether I'm sweeping the floors or, hunting or whatever it might be, that place of sweeping the floors contributing to the tribe, and that's their purpose, that's their aliveness. And I was like, man, what a difference compared to what I thought this was going to be like in the U.S. So that's like I said, what we're going to go talk to someone who knows a lot about the concept of Ubuntu out in Africa in January. So I can't wait for that conversation. We're going to get to explore some orphanages out there and just get different perspectives of aliveness, like I said, beyond the North American perspective.
I had a conversation with a guy and we were talking about freedom in Iraq, and he was explaining a lot of different things that were very challenging, but the really hard one that comes home and still is tough for people to understand is he told me a story how his daughter had gone up on the roof to hang some laundry to dry, and she spent too much time up there. So when she came down, he beat her. And I'm like, wow, that's horrible. And I hate hearing this story. What the heck does that have to do with freedom? But over time, you learn that he has to perform that role to protect his family. And if someone thinks that she's doing something wrong, that she's a whore because she's up there or whatever, she's looking at a boy or whatever, then his family, everybody's at risk. So he has to perform this act to teach the proper behavior so that there is no question. Because when you stick your head up in a tribe, you're begging for it to get cut off.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's, I get curious about in that conversation, like, so what other options other than beating her there's a whole, like, what are the other options, and why is that the go-to? Is that, again, the conditioned human versus the human condition? There's so much in that to explore, and the culturals, there's so many differences out there, and that's what I'm excited to learn more about as we go international, do a little more international with our documentary here.
Yeah, I'm excited for you guys. It's such a cool thing. It's called thesearchforaliveness.com, sponsored by Tuthill. You got Chad Gabriel, who's the host, and but it's just been a fantastic conversation, man. I love it. I can't wait to see what you guys come up with, and then how you start to put these perspectives together, because that story I told you, it took me years to figure that out. It took me years to understand, with enough other conversations, that that's horrible, but that's also his reality, which it would be the example of arrogance for me to assume that I would act in a different way in that situation.
Totally, yeah.
And so it's just like, it's not my job to fix their problem. It's my job to try to understand why their reality is the way it is. We're looking at one action, not the 10 million actions that led up to that point.
Right.
It's whew, man, it gets heavy fast when you look at those things. So, all right. So on Twitter, you guys are Aliveness Series. Everywhere else, you're The Search for Aliveness. You guys can reach out. You can find these guys. Chad will talk to you, I promise. And if you guys can't get a hold of him there, you can get a hold of me at Pete A. Turner, pretty much everywhere. And if you guys are interested and you have someone you want to recommend, including yourself, you can go to the casting call. They've got current openings for what they're looking for, and there's any number of them, so you can recommend someone, including yourself, and speak up and let them know. And just let them gather some perspective for you and watch. They have a slot for someone who's age 90 and up. Like, I would love for you guys to talk to Norman Lear, because he's 90. I think he's 95 now, active every day, always doing stuff. And boy, that guy is wisdom for days. Just so fantastic. So,
and where's he at?
He's in LA. He's in Hollywood. He's gettable.
Okay.
Yeah, he's gettable.
That's awesome. And for you, for you and your listeners, if there are any thought leaders or other just remarkable stories of aliveness that you think make sense, there is a button on the bottom of that casting call page that's basically like, don't see what you thought you might see on this casting call list, click here and share that story. So we're considering the ones that are kind of tangential to the core roles. That was just our initial set of focus for this. Interesting perspectives, we thought, given the 5 categories of aliveness that we'd want to hear from. And we've certainly, like this Ubuntu one, that's not on the list, but it's certainly something that I'd love to explore. So.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Hey, will you come back as you're on the way to do some more, maybe sometime next year once you guys have some more shows?
100% yes, absolutely.
I love it.
I'd love to be back, man. Thanks for having me, Pete.
No problem. Chad Gabriel, everybody.